there was always going to be some inevitable things coming up whenever there's some controversies in, I guess, a not overall kind of like series, but more of ideas within them that when they eventually get to the animes, especially when it becomes a lot more widely known amongst the more vocal crowd, that it's bound to go off the rails. And this is one that there was good predictions of it, becoming a little hectic. It didn't go as large as a lot of people did, but there was some sad and I would say kind of, well, no, not really kind of, very desperate grasps by certain people to make it more controversial, to make it bigger than it was in order to get views. That being the trash website Polygon trying to cash out on the idea of trying to make Isayama some form of like hard right fascist after events in Attack on Titan made it into the anime when they found out stuff about Marley, which is again it's such a beaten over topic now that I'm kind of glad that more of the fan base seems to just be like, no, we understand now. We don't care. We know what he's doing. They're not gonna buy into this outrageous clickbait stuff. And it's weird as I feel like a lot of the anime people like understood it too. Like it was a little bit of a kind of brush over. Like people kind of just got it like immediately. But then obviously you have these people trying to stir up this fake news, and it just becomes more sad than anything. More of this like, why are you trying to ruin this series in the eyes of so many purely for your own gain? And it's not even like they're trying to like, oh, I need to beat my rival at something. It's just like, oh, we just want you to click on our trashy website. And again, I actually used the link. I googled it. I read it on my phone. I didn't want to take any screenshots on my phone because obviously it would look kind of weird in laid out on my computer. And I didn't want to click it on my computer because if you've never been to Polygon, their website, and they're bound to give you malware or some form of virus. It's a super trashy website, but they're infamous for being kind of this hyper like outrage culture clickbait. And the guy who wrote this article, actually, I read the article, and I there's this really kind of clear I don't care, I'm doing this for money moment on his Twitter. Let me pull this up. You have this part where if you've read Attack on Titan, you know that it's much more about war than anything. Like there's obviously like the Titans and all the action throughout it. Especially like in the beginning of the series, it was much more about survival than anything, kind of humans against the Titans. And it's become much more about war. It kind of like built over why all this stuff happened prior. And I'll try not to give spoilers, but it's much more about kind of like the impact that war has on it when you have a lot of these different characters, and how exactly, not like, oh, we're getting like development from specific like crazy events. It's more of just like the long drawn out kind of like weight that like combat has on the mind of a person. And so it becomes so much clearer when you actually like are a participant in reading the series, instead of just like, oh yeah, I heard this from a Polygon article, that Isayama does not depict Nazism as good. It's very much shown us how ugly it was, and how just like putrid and just all around horrific, like a lot of like behind the scenes kind of areas in war kind of can be. And you see that in this statement, because this was a really like direct summarized kind of like layout of how exactly a Polygon writer is. So you have this guy Caesar. He just says, it's weird, the story. It says racism is bad, discrimination is bad, there is no race of people that should be oppressed. Attack on Titan quite clearly tries to say this through its story, and how disgusting Nazism is. Yeah, again, it shows it as terrible. It shows it as really bad. There's a part where, just pretty much for fun, like these dudes who are depicted kind of like Nazi-like feed a little girl to dogs, and they're not treated as like these heroes. They're shown as scum. They're shown as just these dirt people who want nothing more than to cause agony and hurt others for their own enjoyment. They're not depicted as good people to any degree. And like the closest thing that people have been like trying to be like use is like, oh look, he's made some positive comments about like about this thing. Is like there's a dude named Pixis. I always forget to pronounce his name, and he was kind of like inspired off of like this Japanese I don't think he was a general. This military guy from like the 1910s, the 1920s. And he was in that kind of idea that like from military tactics, you can look at like, this guy knows what he was doing. He had the mind for the job. Doesn't mean he's a good person. It just shows like if you want to have like a powerful military kind of like mindset, you're going to go for certain individuals throughout history, even though you acknowledge like these people were horrible. You know though that they were horrible because they knew the game of war and combat. They were able to play on this disgusting kind of like overly aggressive like event. And even though again that it's bad, you want to know exactly how to try and get the the mindset on your enemies and whatnot. But then you get this one, and he's like, this article literally says the exact opposite of what Isayama's been portraying in the series, how they come to that conclusion. This dude, Tom Spielman, just says by having a brain. And again, this other person says it's easier to insult than to admit. You went full-blown dumbass on a series you didn't know too much about to research it for clicks. Such journalism nowadays. And the guy literally he's memeing about it. He says, I actually read the manga in 3 days in between. Yeah, he just tries to like make it be like, look how hard it was for me. And yet, look, I'm making money off this, so it's good. It just shows like the level of dishonesty. And you can try and like pull out like, oh yeah, it clearly shows like Nazism in the series, but they're not shown as good people. Like the whole thing about it is like war. It's like neither side is really good, but even in that, like the side that is kind of Nazi-like in Attack on the Titan is depicted way worse, like than everyone else. They're shown as being bad people. They're shown all around it as just being this vile like creature in human form pretty much. And it just shows you that they don't care. Like again, when I went over this, I clicked the article on my phone. I didn't want to have anything in here that like you would be like, oh, let me go look at this. Literally the whole article, it's a TLDR of the series, and then a couple points. The author of it, Tom Spielman, where the fuck his dumbass name is, will try and be like, well, this is bad in this area because I depicted it this way, not from what the actual author depicts it as. That's pretty much how it goes. You don't need to read the article. I think you can kind of just see it right here, the subtext, and that anybody who actually reads or watches Attack on Titan knows that that's not true. Any of this idea that Isayama is like slowly trying to brainwash people into having Nazi ideals, yeah, I don't think that's the case. Again, anyone who follows the series would know that's not the case at all. And if you don't believe me, check out the series. Like there's no point where it's like heralded up as like the Nazi like dudes are good people. They're bad people. Like the only time that you can say that like there isn't like a depiction of them not as scum, it's like when you're seeing the characters who are just like on their side, but they don't participate or know of any of the grotesque areas. They're just kind of like, oh yeah, we're soldiers in an army, but they are not involved in any of the horrors that like the bad Nazi-like characters are shown to enjoy and what makes them bad, and where Isayama uses to show these are not good people. But come in the comment section below on what you thought about all this. What exactly is like the mindset when you see these articles nowadays? I don't believe them, and like anytime I see one of these articles, it doesn't even have to be Attack on Titan. It could just be anything. I know that My Hero Academia gets a lot of ridiculous articles about them now. I think their fandom has more like controversies than most series get all together, and this was only in the last year. They get something like every 2 months. So, like with them, the same thing. I see an article or they're saying something about it, and I'm just like, I don't believe you. You guys have lied too many times. You just want the clicks. You don't want facts. You don't want to actually like come up with any like interesting topics or arguments. You just want the clicks. Other than that, tell me in the comment section below what you thought about this. And I'd really appreciate if you thumbs up the video, press the like button and subscribe button, and check out my other videos. By that, I appreciate everyone who's already subscribed, and I thank you all for listening. Bye.